Hi guys. So today I'm still in Romania and I'm in the most beautiful spot that I have seen for a long time, and I want you to see it. Isn't this just beautiful? So I want to share with you something about intuition and going with the flow of life. And I've always been someone who is very um, mind and intellect oriented or driven. And the intellect is a powerful instrument, but I already mentioned in this last video there's another intelligence, and all the mystics and the yogis and anyone with some sort of spiritual experience and level of development has always spoken about this other intelligence, which has been named so many things. And you know, in yoga there's this whole path of devotion, where you try to surrender yourself. And I've always had struggled to understand this. What does it mean to surrender? And I'm still at the beginning of really exploring this dimension. But what I think it means is basically, that you surrender your sense, your identity with, because most of us in the West especially, we are identified with our mind, with our thoughts, with our intellect, with the logic that our mind can come up with. And while it's powerful, it's also limited. And then there's a whole other dimension in us, which is much more hard to grasp. It's less tangible, and it's definitely not logical. So, because we are trained the whole of our lives, the way we are raised and the way we have been educated in the schooling system, we really only used one dimension, and that's the intellect. And this whole other dimension we haven't really been trained to use at all. So it's very, very dormant, and at the same time it's so powerful if we allow it to be accessed. And ever since I came to Romania, it started so funny because, it started all with this kind of feeling that there was a particular book in my bookshelf that I hadn't read for a long time, so I picked it out because I had that urge to read it, by this person, Craig Braden. And then I read this book just like within one day basically, and I noticed he's coming. I saw then, that was the next thing. So he came to Romania to teach his program in Bucharest about heart intelligence, and basically he's talking a lot about this kind of surrendering and accessing the other intelligence. And ever since that, I'm in a very kind of devoted place, and just trying to see where life leads me. And so the most fascinating things that have happened since then, I've met so many, I've met very interesting people. Some very interesting opportunity came up with a project to work on, and another one which I can't really talk about right now, but it's some major projects, and they seem to be even possibly interlinked. And the thing I'm trying to say is, it's something that I could have never planned for. And there's a fascinating book. It's called, actually, if you haven't heard about it, it's called The Surrender Experiment, I think, by Michael Singer. And his story is just unbelievable. I mean, this was a guy who basically lived in the woods, in the forest in the US, and he started an experiment that he had set himself. Whatever opportunity life present himself, he doesn't go by his likes and dislikes, but instead he goes by um, what life throws himself in or in front of him, what direction life pushes him. And this is not to be misunderstood with someone who is just, being pushed around here and there, but someone who is actually aligned with life, with life's intelligence. And this guy, he has just the most amazing story. It's like just unbelievable if you read it. Basically, he lived in the woods. Then more and more people joined him. They grew an ashram out of it. He started a major construction company because things just happened for him. And then at the end, he started even like a huge software company. And all of this while living in the woods, in the forest, in an ashram, basically, that he has built. And it's just a nice story. It's a real story, and it's an example of what can happen if we are more aligned with life. Because life itself, I feel, is much more than what's going on in our intellect, and we can't really grasp it. And this energy, if we are able to access it, then so many things can happen that we could never have planned for. I think there is a place and time for, using our minds. Obviously, for specific tasks, we need to use our logic, and oftentimes it can make sense to have goals and a vision. But then at the same time, I think we need to find that balance and need to be able to leave that aside and also see what life pushes us towards. Because there's such an, if you just look around in anything, like in the people you meet, nature especially, whenever I came to nature, I'm just so humbled. And if you look into all of this, you can just not help but notice that there's such an incredible intelligence in everything that's penetrating everything, from the from the most little kind of plant to more complex kind of lives. There's an enormous intelligence surrounding us, and if we really see that, then it's natural that we are leaning into a different state where we can see, hey, maybe my little mind is not everything, at least the logical dimension of the mind, and there's another form of intelligence. So I think we have to learn that again, and there are powerful practices to do that. There's forms of bhakti yoga, there's forms of devotion and surrender, there's forms of accessing the heart intelligence in every tradition, even in the Christian tradition. And there are forces in the past that have worked to eliminate those that knowledge also, especially in Christianity. There's evidence that there have been books in the Bible that are dealing with specific forms of prayer to access this kind of heart intelligence, and they have been eliminated systematically because obviously there have always been interests in the world that try to keep people small, and so I think it's very, very important for us to access these forms of intelligence again, and I will definitely be exploring it much more, and hopefully share much more with you, and also at some point teach some of these in my workshops. So guys, let me know what's your experience with this. Have you ever accessed the more intuitive intelligence, the intelligence that goes beyond the mind, and how has it had an impact on your life? I would love to hear that from you. I wish you wonderful regards from Romania. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you next week. Bye guys.